Good evening, one and all. This is James at mypeexam.org. Thank you so much for being here, especially on a Monday evening after I'm sure you've had quite a challenging day at work and so on and so on. So before we get cracking, I want to just mention a couple of things. First of all, to welcome you all into the webinar this evening. I want to mention a couple of people in particular. Stuart, who we've been on the chat with a moment ago. Stuart, we had a really good chat earlier today. I really enjoyed that. That was great. I also want to mention Matthew Bowler. Matthew, we don't actually know each other in person, but I believe you're at King Alfred's Academy in Wantage in Oxfordshire. And of course, that was my first teaching job at that school, which I'm sure you probably actually know by now. So it's really nice to see you here. And there's some people who I've been working with in the last couple of weeks as well. Hilary up at Silcoats, of course. Alison, likewise Sally Owen, who I've had lots of communication with in the last few days. So it's really great to have you all here. Thank you for being part of it. We've got sort of like a loose agenda here. We're definitely not going to be any more than 45 minutes, by the way, but we do have sort of a loose agenda of what we're going to be covering. And I kind of noted it down in this kind of colour hue here. I'm going to cover all 8 of these sorts of concepts. Now, I'm going to draw your attention to the voucher code, which is over here. I am going to be offering you a voucher for any purchase with me a bit later on in the session. So do look out for that, and I'll come to that a bit later on. But I guess, what we're going to do is we're going to try and give you an impression of what the primary functionality of mypeexam.org is at the moment. Now I say at the moment because very much planning that this is going to constantly grow and improve as we go forward. But before we do all that, and I always do this at the start of these webinars, I want to just mention, because I think it's always important to remember this, because we all work incredibly hard, just to mention the reasons we do this. Now look, I've got some photographs over here. This one here is with my daughter Georgina with a garlic on her head while we're on holiday in France. Still makes me smile. This one's myself and my elder daughter Anna. That's us in a restaurant somewhere in Spain. This is us on a boat. This is me with my dodgy, hairy shoulders out doing a bit of canoeing on a river in northern Spain, in Rio de Sella, up in Asturias in northern Spain. Beautiful location. And the reason I put these in, and not to show my hairy shoulders, quite the opposite, but to highlight and to remind us all that even though we're all putting in work on a Monday evening, the reason we do our work is to have brilliant times outside of work, I'm sure within work as well for that matter. But let's make sure we always get that balance right. Let's make sure that we try and actually use systems that allow us to really make the most of those opportunities. And I hope that mypeexam.org possibly might be part of that. All right, anyway, let's get cracking. So look, I'm going to talk to you first of all about the student account. What I mean by this is what is it like if I am a learner? What happens? So if I am a student on mypeexam.org and I'm registered for some courses, what happens to me and why or how is it going to benefit me? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back into the webinar room briefly. I'm actually going to stop the screen share for a moment. You're going to get to see me over here, slightly bearded and feeling the fatigue on a Monday evening. But I'm also going to immediately go to the entire screen here. And as I go to the entire screen, I'm going to share that with you. You're going to see the screen go a bit funny there. But actually, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to put this on the screen for you. And of course, I'm currently logged into mypeexam.org as Darth Vader. All right, bit of a sinister student, but never mind. And first of all, notice that the site becomes personalized to the individual student when they log in. So rather than it saying mypeexam.org, world-class peak learning experience for everyone, all that sort of stuff, it personalizes to the student. So a couple of features. First of all, when the student reaches the homepage, this My Progress button is probably the most important feature for them. So if they click on this button, it takes them down straight away to effectively what is lower down the homepage. Look, it takes them to the courses that they are studying. So we can see here that Darth Vader, he's doing well. He's enrolled for A2PE and exercise physiology with OCR in this case. And what we can do is we can click there to get to the course. But what we can also do is either click on this little arrow here, or we can expand all over here. And it will quickly show us that Darth is 6% complete, and I'll come back to the notion of completion and mastery quite a lot in this session. And we can actually, or Darth himself can see some of the scores that he's been accruing while taking part in these lesson activities and these quiz activities. So for example, Darth can see that he's doing really well on that phosphocreatine system, as he's actually only had one go at it and he mastered it straight away on the 3rd of September. So he knows that that has gone well. But he does seem to have a bit of a challenge with the ATP and energy system lesson. He scored 17% once, 50% once, and 83.3% once. Now, while that's not necessarily bad because the curve is going upwards, we of course want that student to get to completion. So this sort of screen is going to enable that student to look through their learning material and to see what they've done. So let's now go over to the course and we'll click on the A2PE exercise physiology. And what we'll see here is that exactly like we've said, we've got this content here that Darth has attempted, or some of it at least, and we can see that the one lesson he's mastered is the phosphocreatine system lesson, or the ATP-PC system lesson. So he's got this ATP and energy lesson, and he's got the lactic acid system and the aerobic system lesson that he has not yet mastered. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's just go into one of those. Let's go into ATP and energy. This is one that Darth, as my phone twinkles away in the background there. Should have put that in silent, shouldn't I? We wouldn't let our students away with that, would we? But what we've got here is we see that within this lesson structure, we've got a bit of an introductory text for Darth to read and to sort of get an idea of what's going on. And then essentially Darth has got 2 topics within the lesson. One is called the role of ATP and the other is the introduction to energy. Now we see with these green dots that Darth's already passed these, he's already completed these. So if he was going to do them again, and we do encourage students to revisit tutorials, we'd see here, for example, that we have a 9-minute tutorial describing the role of ATP in the body. Now, that's all going to be quite familiar to you if you've used my materials before. It's electronic blackboard teaching of all of the central concepts of that theory. Now, effectively, what we can do there is that Darth can study that lesson, make his notes. He can move on to the other tutorial, which is in this second topic called Introduction to Energy, where I talk about the different substrates within the video that contribute to the resynthesis of ATP. But ultimately, once those topics are taken, Darth wants to come back to this lesson page, and down here, Darth has a quiz to complete. Now, we can see already that Darth has not passed or mastered that quiz. So let's have a go at it. And hopefully I'm not going to embarrass myself by getting too many wrong. But you must score 6 consecutive answers to pass this quiz. Good luck. So first of all, realize that there is no notion of aiming for a C grade or a D grade or a target grade or whatever it happens to be. Every student has to aim for 6 perfectly correct answers in a row every single time. So let's have a go with that. Let's start this quiz. So what have we got here? Question 1, examine the image below and match up the description provided to the correct letter A, B, or C. So we've got A, which is above the arrow in the breakdown of ATP. Now I know that that's ATPase, so I'm going to drag my A down there. B, that's the first product of the breakdown of ATP. Now I know that that's ADP, adenosine diphosphate. And of course C is going to be the additional phosphagen, which is left at the end. Check. And I move on. The next one, this is quite a lengthy question, this one, and challenging. Look how challenging it is to get 6 perfect answers in a row. Complete the gap fill exercise by using the terms below to accurately complete the sentences, which will be credited with marks in your ATP exam in relation to the role of ATP in the body. So they have got to effectively produce the mark scheme here. So what have we got? We've got some terms here that the student has to add in. So we've got the biological currency of all energy, the only utilizable source of energy in the human body. 2 to 3 seconds worth of stored energy. ATP is in all cells of the body, broken down in the presence of ATPase. Longer bouts of exercise must be achieved by the resynthesis. I hope I'm getting these right. Resynthesis of ATP. The resynthesis of ATP is achieved by the 3 energy systems. Now look, this is challenging to get this right. The breakdown of ATP isn't some kind of reaction. Now I think it's an exothermic reaction. The breakdown of ATP isn't another type of reaction. Now we've got the term here reversible. So I'm going to write in here reversible. Reversible. Make sure you got my spellings right. When ATP is stripped of its 3rd phosphate group, it forms ADP. Let me check. Yes, correct. But see the rigor that's being challenged here. A more straightforward question: within which part of the ATP molecule is there a utilizable high energy bond? 2nd and 3rd phosphate group. What does ATP stand for? Adenosine. Have I spelled that right? No. adenosine triphosphate. So we go on and we go on and we go on. Which of these food groups provides energy for movement? They do, and they do. So we've got to get that perfect. Good point, this. If I don't get those three perfectly correct, that question is answered incorrectly. I have to have it perfect to get the marks. If I add one that it shouldn't be there, or if I miss one that should, I get it wrong. In the presence of which enzyme does ATP break down to release energy? ATP, ASE. And there we go, we check, and we finish the quiz. Now, again, I get a little generation. I've scored 100%. Now, look, I'm going to click here to continue. Okay, I could show myself in the leaderboard. Look, there I am, Darth Vader, most recent entry, 100%. You see, Reese has had a good go at this. That looks like that's been today. But Darth Vader goes to the top of the leaderboard with 6 points, 100%. And what I do now is click here to continue, and look what happens. It takes me into the next lesson. Now, it happens to be for the phosphocreatine system that I have passed this lesson. So again, we'd move on to the next lesson and so on. So you can see by this, if we go back to Dart's homepage a second, we go down to my progress, we should now see, I'll go back to exercise physiology, I should say. We should now see that that lesson, ATP and energy, has been ticked off with that green tick. Now, I hope that what people can kind of see from this, I'm just going to come back onto the screen for a second. I hope that what people can see from this is the idea that the student has to master those concepts. Now, a couple of things about the quiz. The quiz offers a different set of questions every time the student does the quiz. So if they don't pass it with 6 correct answers, first time, second time, third time, it'll keep generating a different quiz for them each time. Now, there's a limited number of questions behind the quiz, so if they do it 10 times, they're going to get some repeated questions, but the quiz is always different. The order of the points is always different. So when they've got to do multiple choice, for example, it's always in a different order. When they've got to match things up, they're always in a different order. So it provides them a different challenge each and every time. So that's kind of what the student experiences. The only thing I'm not going to talk about in this session tonight with regards to student is what it's like for them to submit assignments. I'm going to do subsequent ones on that, but do bear in mind that there's a full using mypeexam.org course on the website as well that teachers can use to guide their students. Okay, let's have a quick look in the chat. So, Stuart, if they get a question wrong, do they get feedback as to what the correct answer is, or do they have to go back to the tutorials? No, actually, I should have shown you that, actually, Stuart. I apologize. You know, when I clicked on the show leaderboard, there was another option there, which was view questions, and that just shows them all the questions with their answers and the ones they got right and wrong. Every single question. So it's 6 questions in effectively what is a long web page, and it shows all the details so they can review that in whatever time frame they want. It's a brilliant question, actually, that one. I really appreciate that, and that shows how inept sometimes I am to forget one of the core features of what I do. So, so yeah, that's perfectly achievable, and it's actually something that teachers should really draw the attention to the student, because it's a good part of that review, feedback, improving understanding, moving forward sort of concept, right? I think that's really, really important. All right, so what we're going to do now is when I have a little look at how the website is, or the basic functionality of the website for the teacher and how that sort of looks differently. So again, I'm just going to share my screen with you, and it's going to be my entire screen. So just, it's going to do that thing of disappearing into the distance again, as it did before. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to quickly log out as Darth Vader, and I'm going to log back in again as one version of myself. Okay, so again, we'll see that the home page will synchronize and will personalize to me individually. So this is this time for a teacher. Just had a nice sip of tea there. I hope you got a cup of tea on the go as well. So the first thing I'd like you to spot with regard to this page, and it might be quite subtle, is that the page looks kind of similar, but up the top, we've got a series of new buttons up here, okay? It's a big black sort of upper navigation bar that is now accessible for the teacher. I'll come back to that in a moment. Again, the teacher can click on My Progress, and this time, look, I'm the teacher of Darth Vader, so I also have access to OCR A2P exercise physiology. Now, that means that I can go and prepare for lessons. I can view the tutorial if I need it if I need to do that for myself to think about the knowledge that I'm going to be developing with the students, I can also go through a handful of quiz experiences to see the sort of questions the students are going to be being asked for their homework in the classroom, wherever it is that they're engaging with this. But something else, look, we've got these courses called Using MyPEXam.org, Group Work, Questioning Techniques, Learning Concepts, and there are 2 others as well, Assessment and Data, and what am I forgetting? Classroom Structures. There are 6 courses for teachers. So let's have a little look at what that looks like. Look, questioning techniques. See, I'm 15% complete on these. But if we go into this course, and a lot of people who think about signing up for mypexam.org don't realize this, is that you get all these courses for teachers. So in this course, there's 13 tutorials for teachers. Now you see, look, I've done questioning technique, the assumptions. I've completed questioning technique, numbers, heads together. But let's say, for example, I wanted to do this one, questioning technique, agreement circles. How does that work? Well, I come into here again. And again, look, I've got, what is this, just over 6-minute tutorial here. And I'll sort of, what I'll do is I'll press play. And I don't think you guys are going to get any sound there. But you see, I'm kind of describing, drawing in how to set up the activity and how to set up the classroom structure. Now, the reason that this is important, the reason that this is important is that, you know, one of the things that mypexam.org can do is it can change what happens in the classroom. So if that is the case, the question then becomes, what does it change to? And I'm trying to answer this question by looking at these roughly 85 tutorials. And again, when I finished it, I just mark it complete. In this case, I'm not going to ask teachers questions to test them out. Not yet, anyway. I might do in the future. And then we move on to the next one. And this one's called Rally Robin or Power Notes. And I can learn this pick up and go method of improving what's going on in the classroom at my own pace. No longer am I required to wait for some teaching and learning SLT type person to organize an inset experience for me. No, today's world, we should have teacher training available for teachers when the teacher chooses it. There's nothing wrong with doing an inset day, but there's something very wrong when teacher development is only the inset day. We have to change that, and this is my small contribution to that. So, like I say, we've got these 85 tutorials, and it grows all the time. By the way, I try and record these every single week, and so when, you know, if you do invest in this, or if you have invested in this, which some of you in tonight have, you'll see this growing all the time. All right, let's go back to the home page. So I think you roughly know there what the teacher courses look like, but perhaps what you're really intrigued by is the tracking potential. So this is where this little dashboard here becomes very relevant to you. So as the teacher now, I'm going to click on my dashboard, and it's going to bring me into what is a very, very simple screen that doesn't look like it's going to be doing a great deal for me. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got 3 buttons. We've got overview, activity stream, and assignments. Now, first thing, I just want you to have a look at the activity stream. It's a very simple structure, but notice here I've got a little bit of information about the most recent activities that my students have been doing. So look, we know that this Darth Vader did the ATP and energy quiz and got 6 out of 6 because you just saw me do that. But notice that it comes into James Sims's teacher real-time activity stream in real time. So imagine a scenario where you're in a classroom and you've got one group of students who are doing some project work, another group of students who are doing some one-to-one teaching with one another, and you've got another group of students on mypexam.org who are taking tutorials and taking quizzes. Well, you can be looking at, while you work with one of the other groups, you can be monitoring your device, seeing these scores come in. Okay, so that's good. Another thing, if we go into this overview now, we've got some very simple structures here. Course reports. Now, I've got a lot here. You wouldn't have as many of this, but if we go to course reports and choose OCR ATP, exercise physiology, we generate something very simple, which I'll develop for you in a moment. First of all, you can message all of your students. So you can say, hi, is your subject, do your homework tonight, or, you know, whatever the equivalent is. Okay, so you can message all of your students. It could be, do this task. Your task is whatever it happens to be. And down here, we have a little indicator here of the students that are in progress with the course and the number that have complete. Now, I've got all 3 of my students are in progress and none are complete. We can see down here that Luke Skywalker is making decent progress, Darth Vader is making better progress, but Princess Leia is moving ahead. Now, that's useful, right? It's kind of useful, but it's not enough. We want more data than that. We want more analysis than that. And that's why this green button is a very, very, very important button for you if you do subscribe to a teacher account, department account, that sort of thing. So I'm going to click this export user info, and it's going to produce for me a very, very simple document, which I'm going to show you here. Okay, now look, it looks like nothing, right? It's just like user ID, name, email, etc., etc. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm quite literally just going to grab all that information and I'm going to copy it. All right, that's as simple as it gets. Okay, so I'll now get rid of this document, don't need it anymore. But what I do have here is what we call the mastery tracker. So in here, we see a blank document which doesn't do anything for us. But when we click on this little courses tab, I can now go up to this cell here, right click, and now paste that data in. It looks like what we had before, right? But look what happens now when we come back to completed steps. All of a sudden, we've got something which I believe is quite exciting. We've got Luke Skywalker here, and we can see topic by topic in A2P exercise physiology, which topic areas that Luke has mastered and which he hasn't. We can do exactly the same with Darth Vader, which topic areas he has mastered and which he hasn't. We can do the same with Princess Leia, for example. Now, look, let's just think about the potency of this. We know that Princess Leia here she has mastered the aerobic system, and we can see here that neither Luke or Darth Vader have mastered that topic. Now, what might we do in this situation? Well, we might say if Princess Leia was a really good kind of support network for other students, we might say, look, Princess, would you spend 10 minutes with these two students or one of these two students, and can you guide them through the main principles of the aerobic system using examples? Now, that confirms the knowledge of Princess Leia, and it develops the other two in a familiar and supportive environment. Now, of course, those support structures need development in the classroom. They need structure. They need students to feel confident in what they're doing. But this information becomes really relevant when you talk about the concept of mastery. Remember, 6 perfect answers in a row, nothing else will do. So until the student achieves that, they don't get that thing ticked off, okay? So again, we can track this. Now, I've got 3 students in here. Imagine you're a course manager, which some of you may well be, and let's say you're doing a GCSE course and you've got 150 students in here. You'd be able to see at a glance which students really needed to re-engage with the system, which students needed to develop in specifically which areas. Now, we have many times in education where we say to a student, you're working at a C grade, you're working at a D grade. And let's be honest, quite a lot of the time, it's a bit like guesswork. Well, maybe you're better at it than me, but I always felt like I was guessing. That data, in my opinion, I know we've got to do reports, and we'll always do that, right? We'll always follow those mechanisms. But for me, it's much more relevant to be able to say to Luke Skywalker, not that you're working at a C or a D or an A or whatever, but to say, Luke, you have mastered specific concepts, which is the PC system, the lactic acid system. Look, we've got that here, but I really want some development from you on the ATP and energy, and I want you to work on the aerobic system. I want to see that between now and whenever it happens to be, that those things are mastered, and I want to see that development taking place. You might set some specific tasks, provide some worksheet, provide some mark schemes, provide some slides, provide some other resources, of course, not just the site, but of course, in this context, we can say we can use much more razor sharp analytical data to show how the student's performing. All right, I want to come back to here. So that's one thing that we can do. Another little button we've got up here is what we call group administration. So if I click on group administration, it takes me through again to a very simple screen. And my group's just called example group. And what I can do is I can just list my users over here. Okay, so I can just list my users. And here are my 3 students in my group. Now, for example, if I'm going to have a one-to-one sit-down chat with Darth Vader, I might click on Darth Vader's report over here. And under that report, I get all of the quiz activity that Darth has been involved with. And I can see whether he's mastered or not those things. So we knew he'd mastered the phosphocreatine system. We knew he'd mastered ATP and energy. We can talk about that here. But again, in my opinion, this is not enough. We want more data. So how do we get that data? Well, what we can do is we can come back. We can come back to our dashboard. Okay, by the way, of course, you could also look at that for Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and you can message them. But if we now come back, sorry, excuse me, to our overview, I've gone a step too further than I meant to here, but what I can do here is I've got this button over here next to example group, and I can export those results. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. It's going to give me another download, this time called Quizzes 8, and I'm going to open that Quizzes 8. So what I'm going to do this time, literally just going to grab all that data, as I did before, copy, get rid, no. And now, hopefully, if I haven't lost that, I should have said yes there, shouldn't I? I hope you were telling me on the screen you should have said yes to that question. Let me just export those results again. So let me grab my data, as I was doing. You won't make the same mistakes I do, I hope. So we'll copy that data. This time I won't close it. I'll just move that over here. And I'm going to come back to my mastery tracker look over here. And now, on this quizzes tab over here, I'm just going to right click, paste the data in. And again, it doesn't look like much in this context, but now if we come into the quiz activity tab, all of a sudden we've got a lot of information. So let's say that we've set a homework for our students, and we've set a homework for the ATP and energy quiz. Well, okay, I can very simply filter everything out and just select that quiz. I can see who's done that activity. I can see what scores they've done. I can see also what day they did the quiz on. And if you go back into the raw data, by the way, you can see the time of day as well, just in case they did it in the middle of the night. And you can see which students have repeated and got to a level of mastery in each of those topics. And of course, if you need to, you can filter in order like this as well, and you can see which students have mastered. In this case, I've got all 3 of my students who have mastered, but of course, if I've got students who haven't mastered, I get their top score in rank in that way. Okay, so again, we can look per topic area. It could be that we want to see, again, not this time a particular quiz, but we want to say, okay, I'm interested to see what Luke Skywalker has been doing. So we can select Luke's data, and then we can look at all of the interactions that Luke has had with the site, and we can discuss that with him, hopefully in a one-to-one. So I hope you can see some of the potency of that sort of opportunity, that sort of tracking. And of course, you can update that into this Mastery Tracker document, which, by the way, is utterly free. You can download it from a blog post, which I'll share with you later on, from the website, and it's for any course on the website as well. All right, so I'm just going to close that. So let me just come back to here. Let me show you where we've got to. So we've talked about this. We've talked about the student account. We've talked about the teacher account. We've talked about group tracking and downloads. I've just shown you the Mastery Tracker, and this teacher support stuff over here. This is the 85 tutorials for teachers. So we've also had a look at that as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back into the Hangout and just see if you guys have got any questions for me. So if you do have a question about anything I've just said, do genuinely feel free to post that into the chat, and I'll do my very best to answer it for you. For me, the tracking thing is important. You can look at the data, but I've seen a big move in education over the last, well, even more recently, but certainly in the last 10 years, to really focus hard on this concept of tracking. Tracking is ultimately a redundant process unless at the end of that tracking we've got razor sharp interventions, compassionate, supportive, developmental, educationally focused, learning based interventions which actually bring about a positive outcome for the learning of that student or that group of students. So I talk quite a bit about the possibility of tracking, but the educational philosophy about that, behind that, is deeply rooted in the idea of intervention based on razor sharp data. Teachers should have lots of data. They should live in a very data centric environment, but they shouldn't be producing that data themselves. The data should be done, it should be there, it should be reacting to the data, which is the job of the teacher. And the data should be based on the concept of mastery of knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Okay, that's what our data-centric environment should prepare us for, and that's my attempt at moving towards that sort of facility, that sort of development. I don't think it's perfect yet, but it will develop all the time, and it'll improve and get better and better and better. All right, so that's the sort of tracker side, and I know a lot of you are really interested in that. What tracking does enable is that when you set a homework, for example, if it's a tutorial and a quiz, you know before they come back in the lesson if they've done it, when they've done it, and how well they've done it. That's powerful. That changes what happens. That changes how you plan your lessons. That changes how you engage with students at the start of lessons. It probably engages how you engage with students in the dinner queue when you bump into them. I was saying to Stuart earlier today, maybe that more reluctant student who hasn't done their homework up until the day before you've got the lesson with them next day, maybe you do go and be at their classroom door at the end of period 5 or 6, at the end of the day before your lessons the next morning, say, you know, you got to do that homework tonight. You're making time for it, aren't you? You know, that gives you a lot of information, right? That gives you a lot of potency to do that. All right. I'm just going to go back to the black screen just for a moment. So I promised you a voucher, and I'm going to deliver on that right now. So what this voucher does, well, sorry, I should say voucher code, really. What this voucher code does is it enables you to have a £25 cash discount on anything that I do or sell, or any product that I provide, assuming that the account is over £200. Okay, so the code is web, as in webinar, 25 off. Okay, web 25 off. So if you do inquire with me about anything, do refer to that, and I will deduct that for you on any of those purchases. Okay, I will deduct that for you. I did have a snazzy way of putting this voucher code up, but it doesn't work. I've tried it 3 times now, and I didn't want to humiliate myself any further today by trying to do that again. All right, so do use that. Now I am going to quickly show you the pricing. I'm only going to do this very briefly for you. Okay, I'm going to very briefly show you the pricing on the website, so you know what you would be looking at if you were to invest in myPExam.org. There's a little pricing tab up here. So the way it works is that if a student wants to enroll themselves for a course on the website, such as a GCSE course, that's going to cost them £25 for 12 months access, £15 for an AS or an A2 component. Now, those fees come down significantly when teachers sign up their students in groups. And I'll let you sort of have a look at that and visit the website to sort of consider that there. This package over here, the department package, and there's actually people in the webinar room tonight who have invested in this, and thank you, by the way, for doing that. This, for me, if you've got any sort of substantial number of students, any combination of doing GCSEs, ASs, and A2s, this becomes very relevant. Now, this looks like a big number. I do agree on that. But this allows you completely unlimited access to the site. So that is any number of students, could be, you know, some schools have year 9s, 10s, 11s doing GCSE, any number of AS students, any number of A2 students, all your A2 students on the RESIT modules that perhaps they might need to do. You'd have as many teachers as you wanted, your whole department benefiting from that teacher training, CPD, that's built into the site, and tracking in any structure you want. On the tracking, by the way, very good practice is that the class teacher tracks their own students in their group, and the course manager has the whole course profile, the whole cohort of students that they track the data for. I do have some schools who even have the SLT link teacher also tracking the whole cohort. And I'm not recommending that necessarily, but it's something you can think about. And there is 15% off that account at the moment, which brings it down to 55250. Should that be of interest to you. And of course, you've got the £25 voucher, which you can add to that, which brings it to 527, I think it is. So that's the pricing. I don't want to talk any more about that. So what I do want to talk to you about is the notion of best practice. What I want to talk to you about here is, to an extent, conceptual. Just let me drag this down slightly. One of the things I really encourage teachers to think about, and it's a question that every single one of us should have had posed to us when we were in our teacher training or very early in our careers, and I don't think it's ever posed, but one of the things that should be posed is this notion, and it is this, is that what we operate with in education is loosely what we could call a fixed seat time model. Now, let me expand on what that means. A fixed seat time model of education means that you can quite literally count up the number of minutes and hours that a student is exposed to something like teaching. You can count up, we know this from guided learning hours in the past, right? And now for that matter, it means, for example, that you can make a pretty good calculation of the amount of time an individual student spends doing homework, the amount of time they have access to worksheets or past paper questions or mark schemes or whatever it happens to be, to the resources. It comes up with some number. Now, the problem with that is that if we are saying, right, this here is the finish line, so here's the finish line over here, okay, here's the finish line over here, we know that in reality, lots of our students start their journey towards that finish line from different distances. So what I mean by that is that we've got some students who have developed more skills, we've got some students who have developed less skills, we've got some students who have got very little confidence. So of course, if we basically apply a fixed seat time model to all students, of course, what's going to happen? Well, maybe this student here and this student here reach that level of mastery and they get their A's or their A star. But what about this one? That one falls a bit short and gets their B or their C. This one only gets to there and gets their D. And this one maybe gets that U, for example. So my point is this: if we have got a variety of students developing an individual, or should be developing at individual rates, but we apply this fixed seat time model, there is one amongst other inevitable outcome. And this is something that I really encourage colleagues to sort of burn into their minds and challenge me about this as well. If you don't agree with me, challenge me about it. The fixed seat time model will always, amongst other things, produce a variable achievement rate. Okay, so that could mean that, yes, this helps explain why some students get B's and C's and D's and E's, but let's not even apply it in that level. Let's take one single lesson, with one topic, with one area of learning. Can we recognize that if we are looking at effectively one topic, topic 1 in week 1, topic 2 in week 2, topic 3 in week 3, etc., 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 we know that very frequently in education, students are getting to the end of that one topic and they are not mastering it. That simple finish line of mastery, we could call this, is not being achieved because they are getting this fixed seat time experience. Well, let's vary that. And that's why I think mypexam.org, it could be other platforms and services as well. This is why they're important, because they can vary the seat time that the student actually experiences. Why would we move a student on to the next topic when they haven't got close to mastering the previous one? That's not to say you'd never do that, but they should have the opportunity to come back. So for me, that best practice is to challenge this idea, that, students have some kind of fixed ability level and we're always going to have students who don't master things. No, if we vary the seat time, we can fix the achievement rate at a very high standard. We take this fixed here and we make it that the fixed comes over to the achievement rate end, and we can take this variable and we can move that over here, make the variable seat time, but we fix the achievement rate. Even just think about it lesson by lesson at a very high standard, allowing the student to go backwards, forwards, and master the knowledge that they have to master. All right, I want to come back into the webinar room just briefly. I do want to see if there are any questions. And I would, by the way, invite you to ask questions. It's really good if you do that. I hope what you hear from me when I talk about that, it's the idea that this is, I guess, what I do ultimately as a business, right? It is a business. It has become that. Inevitably, it has become that. But I hope what you see behind that sort of commercial structure is someone who wants to really fundamentally challenge things in education. My experience of education work, teaching for the last 15 or 16 years, has been really positive. I've loved it. I've actually adored it. I hope that comes across in what I do. But throughout that, I've had this feeling that something wasn't quite right, that we weren't achieving, maybe it was just me, as much as that could be achieved. And I think what I just summarized there with the fixed seat time model is really the underpinning structure. And if you think about that fixed seat time model, it means that the optimal achievement within our classrooms becomes a model of differentiation. That's why we, I suppose, put so much emphasis on differentiation in classrooms, because it's like the optimal achievement. Well, if the model, the structure is fixed and we manage to sort of bolt on a bit of differentiation, that's impressive. But why don't we make the model variable? Then we don't necessarily have to stress and tire and work to produce the differentiated experience on top of it. It's differentiated in its nature, in its structure, in its actual framework. And that's what I'm kind of interested in helping people move towards. Now, the way I do it would be different to the way that you would do it, and so on and so on. I'm not suggesting everyone would do it the same way, but we can challenge this idea. And I've had some amazing experiences using platforms like this. I'm not trying to get all salesy with this, but Like I've worked with students who have genuinely gone from having really low self-worth, really no confidence in their own sort of like classroom performance, intellectual facility, whatever those things are. And they have kind of realized quite quickly that if they can access the resources always, if the resources are quite good, if someone says to them, I believe in you and the standard I want you to get to is really high, you know what? They do it. And I think that's really exciting. So I can't tell you if you follow this, everyone will get A's. That's not my point. But what we can say is if you follow this, you can get everyone to master the ATP, the role of ATP in energy. You can get people to master health and physical activity in GC. You can get all people to master the joints in AQA, GCCP, or whatever the equivalent is. That sort of mastery is absolutely possible. And if we get that kind of mastery in students, then we are, you know, the grades will kind of, they're just the outcome, right? They will look after themselves. Yes, they need to do past paper questions. Yes, they need to look at mark schemes. Yes, they need to understand exam structures. Yes, they need to revise well. But if we go through a model of education where they are not mastering as they go, those things are going to, you know, have less of an impact. We want them to be mastering as they go, mastering as they go, mastering as they go, and then use those opportunities to really make their exam answers brilliant. Brilliant. That's what we should be expecting of them. Anyway, look, I feel like getting a bit utopian or heavy or whatever, so probably should leave that there. All right, next steps in terms of using mypexam.org. Look, first of all, you don't have to. It's completely optional. The last thing I want to do is force things onto people. It's exactly why I do these free sessions, so people can really understand what it's about and have an intuition for what it's about and feel confident about what it's about before investing in those things. Secondly, when I click stop broadcast tonight, you will be redirected onto the contact page on mypexam.org. If you fill out that contact page, that will come through to me tonight, and I will provide you the information that you're looking for from that perspective. Thirdly, the recording of the session is being made as I do this, and I will be sending out to you the recording of the session so you can look back on it, you can share it with colleagues, do it, embed it on your VLE, do whatever you want to do with it, show it to your head teacher. This guy, James, he agrees with you, he doesn't agree with you, whatever it happens to be, you know, use this as a resource as you see fit. But if you do think about investing in mypexam.org, I will guarantee you a couple of things. Firstly, the model will not stand still. What you see there as a site now is not even close to where I want it to be. Now, it's sort of nice, and I'm sure you like it, but it's going to get better. And every day I look at it and go, oh, I wish it could do this, I wish it could do this, and I'm going to make it do that. Okay, so those developments, I'm not going to go into detail what they are, but they are going to happen. There's no question about that. That does go for the resources as well, the quiz questions behind the quizzes, the videos for the teachers. Obviously, I'm also going to be preparing the courses for next academic year as well. So from September, we'll have the new GCSEs and the A-levels. I've been very lucky recently to do a lot of the writing for the BBC on their bite-sized stuff. So I've had a lot of sort of in advance information and lots of information which is not actually out there for everybody to have a look at some of the real detail behind some of the courses. That's been really beneficial. So those things are going to happen as well. So, you know, next year, if you've got your A2 group that they're on the legacy A2, you've got your new A-level group, which are going on to a combination of ASs or A-levels, that will all be possible on the site. So you can rest assured that that's going to be developing. And yeah, look, I mean, it's not going to stand still. And the other thing is that the support service, I hope, is good. I have a basic principle with the support service. There's numerous layers of it in terms of, you know, if you've got a problem, student can't find their password, whatever, that how those things work. Some of them are automated, some of them are by request. But one of the things that I guarantee is you'll have direct contact with me. Okay, so you can ask questions. You can, if you're doing a project with it, you can ask how I would do it, what I think about that. If you've got a problem, if something's not working, you can check that specifically with me. There's not a big organisation behind this. As you can see from behind me, I'm in my elder daughter's bedroom. There's myself, and I've got a couple of people who do some admin work for me to set up the orders. But it's basically a one-man team, right? So yeah, So you get that sort of personal service, I hope. All right. I am going to request that people post comments in the chat. If there's anything you want clarifying, if there's anything you're unsure about, do genuinely feel free to ask that thing, and I'll do my very best to answer it. Like I said, when I stop the broadcast, people will go off. I would like to say to people, I'm doing another webinar on the 30th of September. I've advertised it on my Twitter feed, and I will be sending out emails as well about it. And that's titled Flip Learning Best Practice. So if you are interested specifically in the Flip Learning method, then I'm going to be talking about that. And how the site can interact with that sort of methodology on the 30th of September. And that would be a good one for you to sign up for. Again, it's totally free, no obligation. You're not going to be sold anything. I hope I haven't done too much of that tonight. Right, Matt Baker, James, thanks. This has provided me with a clear understanding of the site. Many of my team have been raving about your site. Good. That's a great comment. And I totally understand. Looking forward to using with our GCSEs and AS and A2 students. Matt Case, thanks, Matt. Look, I really appreciate that. I have to say, I've been really honoured recently. The school I went to as a boy signed up last week, which was really lovely. If you guys could sign up as well as my first teaching job over in Wantage, I would love that. I believe your head teacher is Simon. Is it still Simon? I think it is. It was last I heard. And when I first started my teaching job at King Alfred's, I actually lived in Simon's house in his spare room. So I have some strong connections with the school. So yeah, it'd be really great to have you on board. Matt again, when setting up a log on for students, how long does it take? We have 100 plus in each year group GCSE. We guarantee no longer than 2 working days, Matt. So there's some registration forms to complete. If you submit the inquiry form tonight, I'll send those over to you tonight, those forms. As soon as you get them back, it's the maximum of 2 working days. In reality, we tend to take about 24 hours. So hopefully, unless we get 10 orders in a day, which does happen sometimes, we should be able to turn that around for you within a day or so. So it's pretty immediate. It won't take long. We have to do some uploads to the site with all the student information. We have to put the group structures together. But I've got some people helping me with that now, so that makes a big difference. So yeah, no, it's good. So that won't take long at all. So yeah, that definitely shouldn't hold you back in terms of the admin and the bureaucracy. It's pretty minor. And actually, we do all the legwork. So the only job you've got to do is complete the registration forms and get them in. All right. If you do have a question, post it, and I'm going to give a couple more minutes to say my farewells, and from them we'll go from there. But if you do have a question, post it in there. So look, I'd like to say a big thank you for Stuart. Awesome presentation, James. I'll be taking this to the department tomorrow. Good man. And all being well, we'll sign up tomorrow. Look, Stuart, I think you already know I would be really chuffed if you were involved for lots of reasons. One, because I think we have a lot of shared vision, an educational sort of insight and scrutiny. I think that's a good thing, and I enjoy the conversations I have with you. But the other thing is, Stuart, when I was working at Farnborough Sixth Form College, your place was beating us at swimming year in, year out. So I'd like to tell my old colleagues at Farnborough that you guys are on board as well. So yeah, that would be brilliant. If you were on board, I would be absolutely delighted. Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, so look, thank you for spending your Monday evening with me. And I wish you a really pleasant evening. And yeah, if you've got any questions, I'll be on Twitter straight after this as well. So feel free to fire them over. And I wish you all a very, very pleasant, happy evening, and have a good week. All the best.